Alrighty, let me grab this link real quick. Just the YouTube page, right?
Yep.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit today about a possible solution for managing secrets between different applications using parameter store. Now, our problem is we want to be able to separate access between secrets for different applications, not only for the application, but also for each stage of the application. So for example, we don't want an application in the dev stage to be able to access production secrets. And we don't want application A to be able to access application B's secrets. And in order to solve that problem, we decided to look at IAM roles. And let me explain a little bit about the roles that we are going to be creating for this. Okay. So for each of the stages that we have in our stack, which are dev, stage, and prod, we have to create a role for developers to assume and also for an application to assume. Now, the application needs the roles to be able to read secrets. Developers need the roles to be able to read and write secrets so that they can manage the secrets themselves. So in the end, sorry, let me get rid of that. In the end, we're going to have 6 roles, 3 for each stage for applications and developers. Let me go ahead and I'm not going to delve into the specifics of each of these. Basically, the only thing you have to pass this template to be able to create these roles is the name of the application, and it creates all of the roles based on that name. So for example, the role to access secrets as a developer would be app stage developer role. Now I created a nice little script here that'll allow us to populate all of the principals for these roles just based off of the friendly name of the developers, and you also get to specify what stage you want them to be in. I'm going to go ahead and show the roles. I'll show the help script just to show off how it works. Okay, so to be able to use this script to set up all the roles for the application that you need, all you need to do is pass the name of the application, the profile you want to use to invoke this this command. Now you have to be able to create named IAM resources. So in our case, that requires administrator, the admin role. So you're gonna want to make sure your AWS config is set up to do that. So in my case, the name of the app is going to be parameter store test. The profile I'm going to use is my training profile. I've already created some templates for us. All we need to do is reference those. You can do either YAML or JSON with this script, which is nice. You define developers. So the way I designed this is I assumed you kind of wanted a cascade of access. So any production developer is going to have access to production, stage, and dev secrets. And it's the same for stage. Stage has access to stage and dev. Dev only has access to dev. So with that in mind, the only necessary one to define here is a production.
Because does that mean that building a production one will also build a stage in the dev for you?
That's correct.
Okay, so you just have to define the highest level.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct. Which in most cases is going to be prod. So that should do it for us. It might whine at me because I think I have to log in again. Yep.
I'm glad that someone else has written a script called AWS Login that takes in the profile you want.
I just got sick and tired of writing out the whole thing. Oh, I need to.
I did it once before I got sick and tired of that.
Same here.
That might be a good contributor events AWS ADFS thing.
There it goes.
There.
All right, so now that we got that, let me try running that again. Sweet. So it's creating the stack for us. It's going to take a hot minute to get that going. As you can see, the resources it's creating down here gives us the developer roles right here, the app roles that the application is going to assume, and all the policies associated with it. And it's also going to create KMS keys for each one of the different stages of the app, which may be overkill deciding on how we decide to implement it later. But in this case, I figured I'd just show that it's possible if we do decide we want to use different keys for each of the stages.
So, just to clarify, because I may have missed it, are you going to run one of these CloudFormation stacks for every
application?
For every application.
It's for every application.
Okay.
Yep. That's the idea, at least, is for before you set up the application's pipeline, or however you want to deploy it, you don't need to do it in a pipeline necessarily. But to be able to manage secrets, you're going to need these roles for the application. So for every application, you'll need to create these 6 roles.
Now, one of the concerns we had about that is that the default limit for managed roles in an account is 1,000. So like our dev account.
That can go up though.
Yeah, that can probably
Yeah.
go up.
I doubt that.
Yeah, I don't think
one that
we'll-
anyone cares much about.
Right.
Well, what about IAM groups? We have limited membership of 10. I mean, that just blows me away. Why would we have that hard cap that I don't belong to 10 groups?
I am role limit can be increased though.
No, the role count can.
Yeah.
I mean, probably can, but I think we need to be careful on assuming that things are soft caps.
Yeah.
Because
No, I know those are soft
We've
caps.
been getting ones before, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've had thousands of roles and policies,
Yeah.
many thousands in an account.
About the only thing I can see not being a soft cap is elastic IPs,
Um,
because they only have a few of those.
Well, yeah, there's a few things like what Tom was saying though that you're like, why is that?
Yeah.
a
Why
hard
is that a
cap? Anyway,
thing? Yeah.
there are some of those, but I'm pretty sure roles and policies you can have. I mean, not as many as you want, but just keep
Yeah.
up the limit.
Anyway, yeah, I asked because if it was a different key per stage per
Yeah,
value,
it's like that would be,
that gets expensive.
yes, no.
Because each KMS key is $1 a month, which isn't that much, but once you start,
Building them up, then
Yeah.
it gets bad. And it may be the case that we only want to use one key for each app, and we don't really care between each of the stages of the app,
I
which,
think there are going to be applications that definitely care about the different keys between apps. Yeah.
but I think a lot of those applications are going to be running in a
Separate
different
accounts.
account in prod.
Yeah, that's true.
and this is all, yeah, this is all
Yeah.
separated by account anyway.
So
Sweet.
what are you using the KMS key for?
The KMS key is used to encrypt and decrypt each of the parameters that we're going to be putting into parameter store.
They do the decryption and encryption for you though.
With a default key,
Yeah.
if you don't define what key, which
Is that
So we're not
acceptable for us?
Doing the
It might
decryption
be.
and encryption, we're just specifying which key to do it with.
right.
Yeah.
And it may be accept, like we were saying, it may be acceptable to use this single key for either each application or if maybe
Because they're
even each.
managing it for us basically. It's
Yeah.
the whole point of the encryption is to encrypt it at rest, right?
Mhm.
And so if they'll manage that for us, I think that's great. I don't really see I guess a benefit that comes with having an application having each key for itself.
The only
Um,
thing I could see is the ability to restrict access to that key, but we already have the ability to restrict access to the individual values anyway.
Right.
Well, and
And
it
so-
decrypts it. Well, it doesn't. Sorry, it can decrypt it for you before you even hit it back, right? As long as if you have access to hit the thing, doesn't matter whether you have a key or not. They'll decrypt it for you if you tell them to. And so, I guess it doesn't provide any protection for that credential if you can call the API to hit the to get that credential.
Yeah.
It won't actually like me not having the key won't protect that credential if I have access.
Right.
to
If you have access to it anyway.
Yeah,
And that's why I'm
because
thinking
That
that
makes sense. It
just
maybe
using the default credential would maybe be simpler.
that's true.
It probably would.
Okay.
Just because that's only used to protect it at rest, but then if you can call the API, you can get the thing. So
Right, and that's actually handled by these policies that are set. So like you were saying, so
Yeah.
access, like the actual access to the parameter is set by these policies,
yeah,
and that's based off of the example that AWS had was based on like the parameter name, and I think that's the only way we can do it, right?
yeah,
And the way the convention that I decided was we're going to have app and then stage and then the name of the key separated by dots. So like, hey, if I'm in this application in the dev stage, I can only access my application dev keys. I figured that was a decent model. The example that they showed was similar, except they had the stage first and then the app, but it's really not a big deal, I don't think. I also create some aliases that are useful later, and I'll show you. It just makes it so I can get a hold of these keys a little bit easier in a nice little script that I wrote that allows us to set credentials from our local machine, as opposed to having to go through the console. So now that we have all these roles set up, we can actually go about setting up our pipeline. So let me, this should work. I'm not going to show the template that this is using because it has some sensitive data. But what this does is this creates the pipeline for our application. Now it may whine at us when it comes time to create or when it comes time to name the Lambda, because one of our account roles does not have the proper permission, but I can go in and fix that. Okay, so it created pipeline for us. We go to Cloud Code Pipeline. We can see it chugging away. This is the part that takes a little while.
Yeah, we sent a ticket into AWS to ask why this takes so long. And
That's because it's working on a million layers of abstraction, right?
asked them if they were spinning up new AI every time we did a code build, and they said, no, that's not what we're doing. But how's the second thing? Yeah. I guess CodeShip used to build a whole EC2 every time you wanted to use. How long did that take?
Forever.
It was like a 24-minute build.
Not quite that long, but it was a minimum of about 5.
No. Was there any that were 5 minutes? It
On
seemed like it always
CodeShip?
Yeah.
So they're not creating a new
I don't
Docker
remember.
container or something.
Yeah.
Well-
You got to do something like that, but
It is all containerized, right? Because you
Right.
can't use code build outside of, you have to specify some form of container for it. And so,
But in the meantime, I
but I
can
wouldn't
show.
be surprised if part of that is queuing, waiting for, space.
yeah.
I can show what our application is going to be trying to do. So it's going to show off a few of the different access bits. We pass the application its name and its stage with environment variables in its CloudFormation template. In fact, if I go to build spec, not build spec, it's going to be the Lambda CF right here. It's just right there. We just pass it the environment variables, right? So it knows what app and stage it's in. So it's going to first try to get a secret of that app, of that stage, of the name test key 1. And then it's going to try to access another app's secret for the same stage, and that should fail. And it's going to try to access its own secret in the production stage, which if we're running on a stage that's not production, will fail, should fail.
Hey, while you're waiting on that, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
What about the thought of central stores that don't have secret sprawl versus, like if we had a shared secret, then we'd all depend on that secret?
We could create an access policy that allows all applications to get it. You would just need to make sure that whatever role that whatever is trying to access the secret has permissions to read that secret. So we'd have to like think of a naming convention maybe for like a secret that's shared across all applications, and then just make sure that every one of the roles that accesses that secret has that permission to do it.
And I'm not convinced that that'd be a desirable pattern anyway, but
Sometimes it might be.
yeah.
Yeah. But it's entirely possible.
Versioning, like, I hadn't thought about this before. I thought
I think parameter store doesn't do versioning, but it will show who last edited the key, I think.
So in the Express professional series, continuous delivery book, they stress how important it was to
Versioning.
To version your configuration alongside your app, so they match up. And especially if we have a rollback strategy.
That's true. That would be nice.
So how would we build a corporate version versus?
One of the old solutions we were looking at was using DynamoDB to store secrets, and in that case, you could do versioning. I'm not sure about parameter store. We would need to look into that.
You'd have to do it manually, I think. I don't think parameter store has any sort of built-in version.
Yeah,
Maybe we
You'd
could.
have to have a convention where you've got a version number and
yeah.
So what does parameter store give us that we can config file that has a suffix of version number?
secrets.
In S3.
It's easier management than storing secrets in S3 by far. Yeah, I mean, you could certainly do that in S3, but just the whole trying to protect your secrets from other people looking at them in S3, it's a lot, I guess, easier.
It's got Foley, it's got DNS, it's server-side encryption.
Yeah, but server-side encryption doesn't really prevent people from getting the key. That just means that if their servers are hacked, that your stuff won't be leaked. But
server-side encryption forces encryption transport and at rest, and then you get the same key management that we have that we just talked about. You have all your IAM rules and access policy. I mean, all the access controls are the same. Yeah. One advantage parameter store has is that it's not a billable service, whereas S3 would get billed a couple bucks, right?
well, I think it's more just that parameter store is, I think, easier to use and manage than secrets that are stored in S3. You certainly can do it in S3, but the problem with that is that it's easier to use, well, yeah, because of the way that the policies work in S3, I would much rather implement something that allows me to create stuff but not edit as a human user and not see secrets, but then access them from within my app. That's a lot easier with parameter store than it is with S3. Because the problem with S3 is it's like, how do you keep me from looking at Joe's app's credentials, right? You can do it with IAM policies, but it's a massive pain to try to do that with human users across a bucket or a couple buckets that are like that. I'm not saying it's not possible, it certainly is, but
Parameter store is purpose-built to have two types of access levels. One's an administrative access level that gives you the ability to update, remove, delete keys. The other one is the consumer of that. It's kind of a built-in principle.
It's a hand ACL.
I don't know that it's kind of ACL, but it's a built-in principle in parameter store.
That'd be out-of-box ACL, just like S3. So I'm not against parameter store at all, and I think it's great. I just don't understand what it gives us
That another service could not. Yeah.
And versioning in S3 is much more apparent.
so oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, from my experience, I've tried different products that store secrets in S3, that store them in Dynamo, and now parameter store. And parameter store is by far the easiest. Even if it doesn't do versioning, adding versioning on top of it isn't going to be that hard.
Yeah, just like I was talking about fixing the object.
Yeah, and everything else is just easier, right? Because in order to put it in DynamoDB or S3 or wherever, we're going to have to write a whole bunch of custom code to do the logic of, well, here's how I fetch the right thing and all of that.
I don't see those as real problems, but I'm going to just go with.
I think
But parameter store has that built
I'm the
in.
only one that doesn't see parameter store as being way easier, so.
I definitely
I'm
see it as being easier.
glad we had that conversation.
Yeah.
I,
I've tried them both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I've tried both.
again,
I
it's
have the same
a preference,
experience.
but
Paul's, yeah, I'm a big proponent of parameter store having with this one as well. So
we could make it work with S3. I know we
we've only
could. I know we
known
could.
about the service for a month.
Oh, I know.
Right, yeah.
But we could
Well,
make it work with
the reason that
S3.
we found out about parameter stores, we were
talked
fighting
to
with these
yeah.
problems, and we had a call with AWS, and the AWS engineer, not the salesperson, but the engineer said, "Oh, all you do is use this." And we're like, "What's parameter store?"
Yeah.
And then we started playing with it, and everybody's like, "Oh, okay, this is a much better world."
And, you know, and it's been available since revamp. We learned about a month ago. I mean, this is a problem I'm sure a lot of other organizations have solved without using parameter store.
Right.
And,
Well-
and I've had AWS engineers recommend some like these solutions before. So I don't think that AWS engineer is saying, well, you will use this service for everything.
I
Necessarily
think,
gives you credit.
Tom, if you would have been on that call, you would probably be more persuaded because there was a good description of what's out there and why use parameter store. It wasn't just go use this.
A lot of places don't use S3 for stored secrets either. They use their own secrets store that they deploy.
A lot of
in
people don't
Amazon.
like the secrets well. They want it that you type a couple to one central service for
Yeah.
like Vault or something.
Yeah, a lot of people use Vault. A lot of people use other secret solutions for that, and so that's certainly a fine thing to do. And that's basically what parameter store is it's a secrets vault for an account level. And
But yeah, I mean,
it's very
there's a lot
simple.
of-
It's very simple. It doesn't really provide a lot of functionality, but to me, it seems like it provides anything we would need.
Because for S3, like to load up your JSON in S3, it's, you can dash SSE on the sync option on your machine. And then to get it, you just read this object and read the package.json to get the version.
It's not the API calls that's the problem. It's the administrating of where you put secrets, how they're controlled access, and where they're located. I don't know. Having tried the S3 route, I guess it's still, an opinion, but I definitely prefer parameter store. Like, hands down.
Organization gives us an own pattern.
But that's just me, so,
Anything will give us an on that.
yeah.
So I mean,
Everybody uses
like, again, I'm not against parameter store. I just, like all these things about how difficult S3 is, just doesn't seem.
Making
Yeah,
API calls to S3 is not difficult. Locking down access and making sure that you control your credential access, I think is a lot harder with S3.
Okay.
But again, that's just my opinion, so.
I mean, yeah, that can ACLs and for read-only versus admin, just like you would in parameter store.
Well, in parameter store, right now, power user has star access on SSM, right? So anybody can go and view anybody's things at the moment. So there is going to be some.
Yeah, that'll have to
There's
change.
going to be some access for it to get parameter store working.
Can you actually?
I mean, it's going to be the same machine. It's going to be the
I'm
exact
sure you'll
same
view them, but you
machine.
won't be able to actually view them, especially this one, because it's encrypted with their own keys, and you should not have access to use those keys. Does that make sense?
You could do.
Like, you can see it's there, but you can't see the value.
I mean, I guess I don't, I'm.
Which might be an advantage to using keys. Like, as you were saying.
So
And one advantage of using keys for the application might be to lock down that access. So just because you can see it and access it doesn't mean you can actually see it. Does that make sense?
And really, it's,
Well,
to me,
You can, though, because there's an API call that when you make the call as a parameter, if you have the ability to get it, they will.
Oh, they'll automatically give it to
There's a parameter where
you
can say
regardless?
Decrypted on the server side when you. go
Oh, I
to it. So
see.
there's not really a lot of point in having your own.
I wasn't aware that that was a thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Unless your code is the one calling KMS through the decryption.
So the key, that's why I say the key is only used to protect it while it's at rest. It's
Yeah.
not actually used to protect it from people.
Gotcha.
Access to get it, you know?
That makes sense.
That's all controlled
By them.
by the ACLs on the key.
Oh, well, that's silly. But it fulfills its purpose, right? Looks should be done by now. Sweet. So we have that application deployed in all three of the environments. Now, right now, we don't actually have any secrets that it's trying to access in parameter store. So I'm going to show you what it's like to add a parameter. You can do it through the console manually, but I also created a nice little script here that should make it easier for us. Show you how it works. Whole principle being that we lock down access to the keys based on the name. You're going to have to give it the app, stage, and the name of the key when you're adding the secret. So we're going to go. And first, actually, the profile you want to use to invoke the command. Depending on how we decide to do access, because the idea is we're going to want to have all of our users be federated, right?
Talk about it, how you have it set up now, and then we'll talk about that later.
Okay. Is it okay to show my AWS config up here?
The config, yes, your credentials file.
The credential files and the config should be fine, though, right? Because I think it'll be easier to explain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And update.
Yeah.
Creates not as much of a problem.
Administration and visibility. Yeah, there's going to be issues there.
So I know it goes kind of opposite how IAM normally works. Is there a way to attach a role to keys to be like only these people can access this particular key, or does it have to be?
You can do that on parameter store itself, on the keys itself. Right now, we have it set up for full access, just as people are getting used to it.
Same with S3 too.
Yeah, what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to remove full access to parameter store and using the what Travis was just talking about, using the user path. So when you log in to any of the accounts using ADFS, your ARN is ARN IAM assumed role / and then either power user or account administrator / your net ID. So what we'll do is we'll need to set it up so that you can only administer keys that you've created based on what your ADFS login is. Now that introduces a problem of survivability of the individual, when there's turnover and whatnot. So there are a few issues we're going to have to solve with that, which we'd have to solve with Dynamo or S3 or
wherever. Want to go. I mean, we either want to do a tribute space access control or Voldex. We want to do them.
Yeah.
And IAM and Voldex.
Right.
So if we wanted to do tributes, then we'd have to create our own. So I really think that we should just stick with roles.
Yeah, we could do a tribute based on pathway, maybe.
The real problem though is that we don't get a lot from ADFS, just the username.
Right.
There's no attributes that you can get govern that, or there allows to govern that. Just the username and the role, the IAM role that they're assumed.
I'd have to see if there's other metadata that's associated with that session.
And that get the person's everything to be a person, like all their memberships.
Yeah, the grow group is cast on and some other things, and so.
But not in the actual user itself, right?
I don't know if that's true. I know that we get that one piece. I don't know what other metadata we may have associated with that.
We always help us by membership with pod accounts. If you have power user in a pod account, then you can see the secrets that are in there.
Yeah,
And
that's a
you
role.
can.
That's the way it is right now, yeah.
If we want to leave it that way, we can. I don't know if they wanted to do it that long.
There's usually two camps on this. One is if you can't trust the people that have power user in your account, then you've got other problems. And the other one is access. And right now we've elected to just go star access for power users, so you can view keys, you can do whatever you need to. We're trying to protect against outside, not inside, right? We're trying to protect against having keys sitting inside our repos, and that's what parameter store S3 or Dynamo does nicely.
Although that the biggest security threat in this industry is internal employees, and not outside threats. But I hate to be the exception, and I reject us thinking that there's the exception all the time. I really enjoyed our own hands up yesterday about that. But I think this is one area that we might be the exception. I don't think that our biggest threat is us. you know, like it would be at a different organization. So I instead of use privilege for that read access, maybe we should talk about appropriate privilege. And we have decided the roles, and that fits our, you know, what we're doing here. So I'm not.
I thought that was the whole reason that we walked around with Paul and said, who do you want to have access to each of your accounts? Walked around with Doug and said, who do you want to have access to each of your accounts?
Yeah.
So this was part of that.
So since we don't want to make crazy Friday decisions today, is that something we should maybe talk about as well real quick? Right now, the way that the access to parameter store set up is just based on us trying something out. It wasn't decided. Should we just try and make a decision on that, talk about the pros and cons and SWOT, make a decision there and then send it out to the group? Well, I'll go ahead and put that on the next agenda. But yeah, I think that'll help. Just have the known world. So how does that play into what you're doing here?
What exactly?
So all of our power users right now have full read access to everything in Parameter Store.
So let me show you something actually.
Okay.
So as an account administrator, right, this is an assumed role.
Yeah.
Let me go to, well, actually, I don't have any secrets there yet. Let me show you the first how to put a secret into Parameter Store. We can either do it through the console or we could do it here. I'm going to go ahead and do it here, though, just what's it again? Okay. So when we set up our roles, we populated the principals with some given users, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just added myself as a production user to all of the developer roles. So I have access to prod, stage, and dev secrets for this application. And it's an IAM user within the account. That's not something we're going to be doing in the future, and I'll have to check in to see how that works with federated users.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, it's just a user in the account. And let me show you how you configure that with AWS config. So this is my user for the account right here. I want to assume the production role right here, right there. Okay. Now, in order to be able to do a policy that is the same every single time, you have to give this role session name to the profile that you're going to assume when managing the secrets, because otherwise, like if you don't give the session name, it just creates one for you, and you can't do access based off of some like unpredictable string. So for now, I just chose to use the same name as your profile. So it should just be the same all across the board for everybody, your net ID basically. And so whenever I want to do operations on the secrets, I have to assume this role and basically use this profile. So let me get there. I'll add a secret. I want to do it for the parameter store test app. I want to do it in the production stage. It's called test key 1, and we're going to call this whatever, some secret value. Okay. So if we look in parameter store now, oh, it's an EC2. And I'll get to I'll answer your question here in a second. Okay. So we okay, right here. So this is our secret, right? And this is the key that we encrypted it with. Now, like we were discussing earlier, we may decide to just use a default key, but I think one of the cool side effects of using this key is, so here, if I want to see the value, oh wait, I can't because I don't have permission to do that. I can't use that KMS key to decrypt that. That makes sense?
Yeah, but you could through the console.
Right, like you were saying.
Yeah.
So that may.
But we could. So if a role didn't give someone read access, if they click show, would it still link it out like that?
I don't know.
All right, so that may not completely answer your question because, like you said, you can do it like it just does it at rest, right? It doesn't really
Yeah.
protect it from the command line, which would be a shame. So anyway, we have that secret now. Our application should be able to find the secret it was looking for right here, which is app stage test key 1. So if I go and I invoke the Lambda, and notice I'm doing this as it's the developer, it's the dev stage Lambda. Okay. Uh-oh, looks like my Lambda's busted.
Well, let's see if we can solve it.
Yeah, hold up.
So it's like,
So it's not getting any value back, but it should be getting a value. Let me make sure I didn't spell the key name wrong. So it's looking for, should be parameter store test. It should be prod because it's in the production or in the dev stage actually. Oh, that makes sense because we didn't add a dev stage secret. We added a production secret. So let me also add a dev stage secret, not through here, through dev secret value. Okay. So it was able to access that developer secret value. However, it was not able to access any other app secrets right here. So it's trying to access other app in the same stage, same key name, and we're getting an access denied error, which is what we expect. It's also not authorized to grab the secret, the same secret in the production stage. So right here, it's parameter store test prod as opposed to dev, and it was not able to access that, getting an access denied exception. So this is just like a really simple, just like a sample app. We're probably going to want to extend this into more use cases. I'm working on an ECS one right now as opposed to Lambda to see if that introduces any interesting challenges. Like you said, we're going to have to consider the restricting access to seeing the secrets within the console as well, as you guys were talking about. But yeah, that's that.
excellent, thank you.
No problem.
Can you tag parameters?
I'm not sure.
I do not believe so.
Although the nice thing about the naming convention is that we'll know like what app it belongs to, which we could assume which team is responsible.
You said some sort of where they group them.
Yeah, that would be nice. Seeing as
Sounds like, well, if you were in S3, you'd have folder, you know.
You know, and I'm not thinking that here to pitch S3 either.
Oh yeah, I know.
I'm
I'm
just-
just
I just
joking.
don't understand what parameter store gives us that S3 doesn't.
Yeah, you're trying to break it down and see what the differentiating factors are.
And parameter store's been around for a few months. S3's been around for a decade. And all the tooling and every single bit of Amazon supports S3.
Actually, parameter store, from what I can tell, has been around a lot longer.
Okay.
Yeah. The API that it's part of is from 2014.
Well, yeah, but didn't parameter store just get announced and reinvent as well?
I think we just found out about it because of a call with AWS.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's a new service.
I see. So parameter stores has been around for, let's say the beginning of time, for the sake of argument. How come not every organization is using parameter store if it's all?
Most people don't even use S3 or parameter store. It seems
Right.
like they
I think
deploy their
most
own
people
secret
want
store.
central.
They deploy a centralized secret store.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of view parameter store to be, that, right? It's a managed, centralized secret store that has like no features, right? Compared to Vault, it has, or any other secret store, it has very few features, but like any Amazon service, it's managed, and so it's, I guess, less work to deploy. So I guess that's what I like about it. I'd rather not deploy Vault. I don't know.
Like all the stuff that I've been hearing you guys talk about parameter is the same thing. The hardness and difficulty. And
S3
everything, it sounds like there's a straw man in the room when it comes to how this is so much better than S3, and I just don't.
It's an opinion, right? Either one would work. It's our we.
Yeah.
It's based on.
I think a lot of the people
fewer
around this
that
table
have
here,
lived in those environments.
it's
And
just a preference, is all. I don't know that it's fair to call it a straw man. It's just a preference. I mean,
Okay, well,
I
to
like
me,
donuts better than ice cream.
how
It's like they're both
much
good, but
harder it would be
I
if
don't know.
S3 was a straw man? A preference I go for, and I won't dispute. Obviously, I can't dispute that even if I wanted to, right? I don't. But the idea that this is so much easier and more managed than S3, I don't quite buy it.
Have you lived in the
I've lived in
environments?
S3.
Okay,
I
so
haven't done this.
so you're taking something you're familiar with and trying to find out how familiar this other thing is based on our experience, but then discount our experience.
No, I came to here to learn about parameter stores.
Right, and so
And what I'm learning is that it doesn't really offer us anything extra except for it's, so I just don't get it.
right.
So-
I mean, so preference is one thing, that's great. But what's going to happen is we're going to end up with this OIT-wide policy that we have to use parameter store for secrets. And you guys are saying the value it offers is preference. And so I'm kind of.
In my view, right, they're both storing things for us. But one is a more general solution than the other. It's like how if I want to hammer and a nail, I can use a rock or a hammer, but the hammer is going to be easier because it's a more specialized tool. They'll both get the job done, but the hammer is a more specialized tool. It is aimed towards storing parameters and secrets, as opposed to S3, which is aimed at storing arbitrary data.
I think we can't version it. Maybe it's not a full-fledged service, just like some other Amazon services are. So we could build the tooling around it.
I've never had a need for version secrets.
I haven't.
What do you use them for?
Well,
Why would you need a previous version of a secret that's no longer valid?
we had breaking change on an app update that used its configuration differently, and so when it got deployed, it used the previous configuration, and so it's broken. And then we had to go, and it wouldn't pass the rolling update, and so we had to go intentionally break the app with the new version of the configuration, and then try to do the update again to get to go through, right? I mean, that's why you have configuration that's versioned and aligned with the versions of your application.
Well, this isn't for all of our configuration, right? We're looking at using it just for our secrets. In a case like that, where we need a completely different configuration setup, it seems to me like that's a good time to rename, to have a new secret with a new name that the new version of the application references.
Well, yeah. So if this is going to be preference, then let's make sure it doesn't become policy.
I agree with that. I think if you have a strong preference for S3, and as long as you can make it work securely, I don't see a reason why your app shouldn't be able to do that.
Right. And no, but
They're both low. They're both
we've
low.
already mentioned Crazy Friday decision in this last 30 minutes, and so let's. I mean, this is great.
We're not trying to make decisions here today. That's not what we're doing. We're pushing that off the spot. So
I don't know. I think if you want to go to the work to set up a bucket and secure it and things like that, which isn't a lot of work, I agree. I don't see why you shouldn't be able to do that. Personally, I don't know. I mean, as long as you set it up securely, that's the problem. Is if it's not secure.
Yeah.
I know you'll do it securely.
I'm going to use this because you have to build in support for this, right?
I do, but you could also do S3 if you really wanted to, right? And so,
yeah, I don't think there's any intention to force the whole organization's parameters.
yeah,
That doesn't seem reasonable to me.
yeah,
Okay.
I think that I don't see a problem with using S3 for storing secrets as long as the bucket's set up properly for it.
If it's severe, I wouldn't have a problem having policy on it, but from what I see, it's preference, and so let's just.
Well,
And I'm a little gun shy of Crazy Friday decisions as well.
and perhaps something that we're going to talk about in Crazy Friday next week might help smooth some of that. I'm going to be proposing basically a standardized SDK, kind of like our JWT SDKs that all work the same way, even though they're idiomatic in each of their languages. A similar approach to fetching secrets. And the original idea was being that I want to be able to use the exact same API to fetch my secrets, whether it's running on my machine locally, on-prem, on one of our servers, or out in Amazon, without having huge headaches. And so, locally and on our servers, it would be using a local file store, because that's about the only way to do it. And then out in Amazon, it could use, I was originally going to point out just parameter store, but it wouldn't be that hard to make it so that, there's a runtime option that says, well, you're going to fetch this from parameter store, you're going to fetch this from S3, you're going to fetch this from Vault.
But isn't that what parameter store already gives us? Is it gives us a known CLI, SDK, whatever language option for
Sort of,
managing secrets?
But
where's it deficient?
we get a chicken and the egg problem if we're trying to, run something on-prem. We have to have a secret somewhere in order to access our secret. And so we get a chicken and the egg problem.
Yeah,
Which is nice to have like a local configuration file that has your secrets instead,
Right.
on-prem at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, like say in your node app, because that's what we're doing. Yeah, like the config object, and we can either equals this S3 fetch, or it equals this, JSON file that's local to you. And your app works exactly the same way. It just sources that JSON file in 2 different places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And based on
You just have to have some keys to get into AWS with the, yeah.
No, I mean, because if you're not in AWS, you pull it off your local file system.
Mhm.
And it's one ternary, and everything works exactly the same. There's no special case.
Right.
Yeah, and well, theoretically, if I'm running locally, right, on my local machine, I can just use my local credentials to go up into AWS and pull up the parameters. When I'm actually executing an application, that can get kind of hairy, right? It's a lot hairier to reference the right profile and all of that inside of an application, and now my application has to be aware of all those profiles and things.
Right. That's the chicken egg.
Yeah. And so by having a more general solution, and anyway, we're going to have a session on this next week where I was going to present a proof of concept and justification for it. But because let's be honest, we're going to be living on-prem for a while. We're going to have applications running here on-prem for quite a while.
And the idea is that we don't want to forklift our applications onto the cloud, right? Because they're not really even architectured for the cloud.
Exactly. If we just forklifted things, as my dad said yesterday, it would be more expensive to run them.
Yeah, and there's a percentage that is easy to migrate, a percentage that's going to be more difficult, and there's some that just isn't built for that.
Yeah.
The idea is that we just rebuild everything as a microservice. Anyway, but that's just a quick rundown of some of the things that you can do with Parameter Store. I've enjoyed working with it. It's been nice, but yeah, I gotta head out, unfortunately.
Yep, thank you very much for the presentation, and we appreciate you putting that together for us.
No problem.
That's in the OIT repo?
Yep.
And is that public?
Yep, it's public.
Great.
And I'll be working on an ECS example here, depending on if there is a need. But that's what I've been working on right now. So.
Cool.
I've done an ECS. It's about the same.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got an ECS app that's using it. It works great.
Okay.
Just
Yeah,
needs
good.
an API call.
The nice thing about Amazon is pretty much no matter what your runtime is, as long as you've got the right role, you can access things the exact same way.
And I know you got to take off. So
Yeah, I do. Sorry.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys.